Good morning, Idaho. Hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome to the Local Yokel Idaho podcast, where we talk about what is going on in the wonderful state of Idaho. Our main story today is about Nampa passing a law against public drug intoxication, plus what is going on at the Idaho House with Representative Mike Simpson and the House of Representatives. Kind of tripped myself up there a little bit. An update on the Quagga mussel invasion on the Snake River, and then finally a discussion on the spiciest hot pepper, apparently not the Carolina Reaper anymore. Hey, glad to have you here today. Please join me for the morning banter where I chat with you guys a little bit before we get into it. But I understand if you're a little short on time and prefer to skip the banter, I understand life can get busy. You can use the timestamp that is down in the description to jump straight over to the stories. For those that stayed, welcome. Thank you for joining me here today and specifically on the banter. But for those that stayed, thank you. Today we have John back, which is super exciting. I know the last 2 weeks just hasn't worked out because, he was sick last week. But, without fail, he's been editing the episodes and it's been a wonderful blessing. But glad to have you back, John.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's been a good week. The weather here has been interesting, typical Idaho fashion.
Right.
It's been good though.
Yeah, I swear, like in my brain over the past couple of weeks, I was like, oh, okay, I'll put away all the summer gear and okay, it's long sleeves permanently, right? I'm going to have my coat always in the car on standby because it's that time of year. But then this week it was like, I think, did we hit 80 this week maybe?
I think so.
There was a couple days there where I was like, I'm burning. I'm dying.
Right?
The heat.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. But then not only the weather is cooling down, but national election season is heating up. See how smooth that transition was if I had thought through it better earlier? No, so it's been fun and interesting following all of the nonsense going on in the U.S. House of Representatives with was it McCarthy getting ousted and then Jim Jordan not getting votes and everything's just going haywire?
Yeah, I think as of the recording of this, he's had his second vote. I think there's another one because we're recording this Thursday. I think there's one tomorrow, isn't there, on Friday?
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. It's been a fun thing to follow. And then national election season, or I guess campaign season, is heating up. It's been fun to hear commentary on the Republican presidential debates. I've listened to a little bit of it, and I could only handle but small snippets of the last one. It was just a bunch of people yelling at each other on stage, and it got old fast.
I was able to catch the first one and enjoy that, but I didn't catch the last one. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, well, and the first one had a little bit more decorum to it. This last one, everybody was just attacking each other.
Everyone was out for that little bit of percentage in the polls, and they were swinging for the fences.
Yeah, they all just wanted a soundbite, and it got to the point where what they were saying sometimes didn't even make sense, or it directly contradicted stuff that they'd already said.
Which makes them look bad, because then you're like, who do I want to vote for? Well, the average person's like, well, I'll vote for the person that's more consistent and holds to their word and is true. Wait a second. All of them said things just the debate prior, and now they're kind of backtracking. Wait.
Yeah, well, man, if everyone voted based on that, we would have a grossly different government. Because so far as I can tell, just about every member of our government says one thing and then does something else.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, there's the age-old excuse that hey, that's politics. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, yeah, but just because it's politics doesn't mean it should be that way.
Exactly. Well, and that's where going back to the House and ousting of McCarthy, that's where I find it interesting because the Republicans who cared seem to have stuck by their guns and said, hey, you went back on your word.
Which we are getting a little ahead of ourselves here because we are going to be talking about that. We alluded to it earlier, and it'll be interesting to see your position on it, John, but I'm not very happy with Mike or Mr. Simpson, depending on the way you want to look at it. My mom asked me about it this morning, and there was an interesting rant.
Yeah.
which yeah, we'll leave that for that discussion. Just kind of a cliffhanger for you guys out there on that one.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in a minute. But you're going on vacation here starting tomorrow. So fill us in on those details.
Details. No, I wish I had more
vague details. Maybe I'll say.
Yes, I'm taking some notes out of the press secretary's notebook here. I'll circle back with you on that one.
Good. I'm glad. Circling back is a good thing.
Just press that button repeatedly. No, I need to talk with my grandparents on that, what the whole plan is. I've kind of left that a bit to them because they've been up here since, I want to say, at least the 70s, maybe the 60s. And they have just been over every square inch of the state and just huge parts of the Northwest. So usually when I'm planning trips here in Idaho with them, I leave it to them because I'm always wonderfully surprised in what they kind of figure out and decide. But as a general rule of thumb, I know the framework is either we're going to go up the Idaho side, so kind of going up there through McCall, kind of Donley, heading towards Lewiston, Idaho side, and then loop back and then come through. I don't know if you have, but you go across the border. I think it's either the Washington or Oregon over there to Clarkston. And then you come back down, and that comes through like the Enterprise, Wallowa way. Really, really cool if you haven't been to Wallowa or Enterprise. Awesome little towns nestled in the mountain. Awesome. There's a place in Enterprise. I think it's called the Sweet Spot or something like that. Oh, it's not. It has something to do with time, the name. I am blanking. I want to call it the Sweet Spot. But it's a really, really nice little bakery there. But they also serve like hot sandwiches and different things and stuff there that they make. I think they'll make like fresh donuts and pretzels and different things there. And it's always cool to stop in that town and have that. Plus, it has all that old architecture. Sugar Time Bakery. There we go. That's what it had to do with time.
Sugar Time Bakery.
And they have like clocks. Yeah, that's why I remember, because it had something to do with time, because they have clocks all over the walls and different formations and stuff to kind of give a nod to the time element in the name.
Ha! Nice.
Yeah, it's a cool place. Plus, I know a couple I haven't done it yet because I've only been over in that area like 3 or 4 times. But there's also supposed to be, or so I've been told, really good hiking there. So you could theoretically like drive over there, have, some stuff at the bakery, and then go hiking in the surrounding areas or over by, I think it's Wallowa Lake that's just up the way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just south. It's just south of Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, no, that would be kind of cool.
And I also, we were going to try to make it for it, but time got cut a little short for it. There's a tram line for there's a ski resort there on the mountains near Wallowa Lake, and there's a tram you can take to like the top of the mountain, and then there's like a restaurant also on top of the mountain that you can kind of eat at.
Those are really cool.
Yeah, they operate most of the year, but I think they start in like April, March. Check that if anyone else there is curious. But I do know it like ends the last day, I think in September, like the 31st or something or whatever. So we weren't sadly able to hit it for that, but I do know I want to try that at some point because I've heard good things. And also, I'll admit it, I like food. I like to explore. I like to try things. And that sounds like a really cool restaurant to try up there.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Well, man, I'm excited to hear about your trip and hear where y'all went and what you did. I think you guys are going to have a great time. I'm excited for you.
Yes, I am very much looking forward to it. I think it'll be the 3rd or 4th time we've been up there, and each time I find new and interesting and exciting things because, it's Idaho. Starting with our first story here, Nampa passes law against public drug intoxication. This comes by the Boise Dev by Autumn Robertsons. The Nampa City Council has passed a new ordinance that prohibits public intoxication. The ordinance defines intoxicated as a person whose mental or physical functioning is substantially impaired due to the use of drugs or alcohol. The ordinance applies to public roadways, public property, public conveyances, and private property open to the public. If a person is cited for public intoxication, it is a misdemeanor with a fine of up to $1,000 and or 6 months in jail. The Nampa Police Department says the ordinance is necessary to curb public drunkenness and to protect the safety of the public. Lieutenant Jason Kimball said the ordinance will target people who are so intoxicated that they are a danger to themselves or others. Which my initial take on this is that it's a good thing. Granted, little side note before we started recording, John, I could tell, has some thoughts on this, so I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, so I did some real quick Google foo. Apparently, Idaho as a state already has state laws against public intoxication, and this law was formed, going back to the Boise Dev article. Kimball said, we had one of our patrolmen who said there's a state code that specifically refers to under the influence of a drug that he arrests people frequently on. So we talked to our legal and we said, hey, can we use the state code and change it to alcohol? So we worked with legal and they changed that to a city ordinance. So apparently there's
a loophole or something that they're trying to fill, or they're trying to stretch it further?
Or something. There's Idaho Public Intoxication, which is alcohol specific. And Nampa is adding a local ordinance for drug intoxication. But then in the story the dev put out and in the comments, they're talking about alcohol or drugs. Now, so far as I know, marijuana at least is illegal to some extent here in Idaho. Now, I know a lot of people that smoke. I know a lot of people that drive over to Oregon, buy it, and then come back. It's easy to get your hands on weed, and a lot of people smoke it. So I can understand the desire to remove people who are impaired under the influence of, however you want to label that. It makes sense. Having walked through large cities where weed is legal, man, the whole city. I was in New York last summer, and the whole city smells of, well, trash, but also of weed. And there's people everywhere who are under the influence of something. And so one side of me says, well, this seems like a good idea because we don't want our cities devolving to that. And I agree with that entirely. The other side of me says, well, but if we already have laws on the books to take care of this on a state side, why are we adding more? And so it makes sense to me if the state has laws against public intoxication for alcohol specifically, to take the language in that law, just like what it sounds like they're saying they're doing, and apply that to drugs and saying, if you're publicly under the influence of drugs, you can also be fined or arrested or jailed or whatever. You can be prosecuted, I guess.
Yeah, kind of trying to extend that law a bit and be like, hey, yeah, we have this for alcohol, but also since we can't per se, without a warrant, try to stop everyone that's coming back from Oregon, right? And just be like, hey, what do you have? We can just say, hey, at least if we see that you've done so much of it and you're out in public, we can kind of have a bit of a law that allows us to be like, hey, that's way too far. You've broken the law and then you've gone above and beyond to try to do it. And even though at that time they don't have the substance per se, I don't know if Idaho law with on cannabis or different things that they can test like the blood or different things or level. And then they could catch you on that to be like, because then it gets tricky because then you're talking about privacy concerns and permission and stuff.
Yeah. And even the blow tests that police officers will administer, those are sketchy legally from everything I've heard. And also I don't know if there's a good way of testing or a good quick and dirty way for testing for marijuana influence specifically, but man alive, you talk about the plethora of drugs that are out there available to whoever, and it seems to make sense to me. Because the other thing is, the question that I would want to ask is, what is at the heart of this law? Is it to stop people from having fun and enjoying themselves? Not really. It's just public. Okay, so if it's public, what's the purpose of it? Well, the purpose of our laws are to promote a good and free society where everyone is able to fulfill the requirements of the
pursuit of happiness, that people have the freedom.
Yeah, you have the freedom to pursue happiness, but and this is where taking the liberalistic kind of view of my happiness can't then impinge or infringe on yours. Well, if I'm intoxicated, chances are good I am infringing on your happiness.
Or safety as well.
Or safety. And that's something they bring up in a couple of the articles I pulled up to dig into. They talk about safety quite a bit here, saying that, well, alcohol is related to a lot of things. And so we're just going to nip it in the bud and say, look, if you're drunk in public, you're getting arrested. And so if you're visibly high in public, or you're tweaked out of your mind on meth, well, man, you're getting arrested because you're clearly not in your right mind. Right.
Which, for those that are like sitting there and, I could hear on the corner, like, this is the first step to like a, full on 100% crackdown, which, I would say Idaho does have a pretty hard crackdown on marijuana and illicit drugs, or does, depending on where you land on that. I would say that it's not sitting there and trying to, the example I give is kind of like prohibition or something, that going back to alcohol, which I think is a great background example for it. Alcohol, there was a time in the United States where we experimented with being like, alcohol is banned, right? Can't have it, just overall alcohol banned. And that I will admit did not go very well, and obviously it got overturned. But the precedent that was then set, and I think it was a reasonable one in that situation, was said, okay, cool, you can't have, we're not going to ban alcohol to the general public, but if you can't reasonably consume it and you start being a threat or a danger to everyone else's pursuit of happiness or safety in general in public spaces in life, then yes, we can put you in jail for that because you're jeopardizing the public. And I think that it weirdly, even though marijuana in a sense kind of has that full prohibition type of ban here in Boise, or not Boise, Idaho in general, it's almost like a pseudo sense of that, to be like, hey, this is just kind of a little bit of reasonable. We're just extending, we're kind of taking this law and logically bringing it over the verbiage into drugs.
Yeah, and it seems to me like, if it could be a slippery slope. And this is where I'd love to see our state and city council, and I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback on this next statement, but hear me out. I would love to see our state and city people actually legalize more drugs, but then criminalize using them in ways that are bad for society. So, like being publicly intoxicated, alcohol is not outlawed. Right? You can drink. You can drink in a bar. You can drink in your house. You can drink in your friend's house. You can't drink in your car driving down the street. You can't drink walking down the sidewalk. I feel like marijuana should be kind of in the same playground. Like, it's a drug. If you want to go intoxicate yourself with it, that's on you, but you can't do it here and you can't do it there. You can do it in those places that are private. And that's right. Where I think it would make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I had a coworker friend, still friend, he's off doing some other stuff. He's not a coworker anymore, but still a good friend. And he would often, voice the sentiment that we need to pull away the regulation stuff. And I'm like halfway there. We'll put it that way to your position there, John. I see the points you're giving. But I'm kind of in this middle where I don't think the level of stringentness that Idaho's restriction on marijuana has is reasonable, maybe is the word I'm thinking of. That I think Idaho should allow it for medical uses for prescription, where there is an in-between. There's a person that's being like, hey, this isn't like you can come to your local store and just get it willy-nilly. But, if a doctor prescribes it, then yeah, I'm going to give you marijuana if there's a medical benefit, if there's a use, right? It's beneficial to human flourishing then. I think Idaho should allow the books and for medical industries in the state of Idaho to start doing that and allow that and give doctors that option. Now, as for recreational use, that's where I haven't fully been won by that argument. But there again, I will admit the crux of my apprehension lies in just ignorance of really chewing over the information, because it's one thing if it's just like, hey, people consume this and it does have delirious effects if they overconsume. We know with alcohol, if you don't overconsume, it actually does have some benefits for the body and it can do good things for you.
Little bit.
But the amount of damage or harm to the human body with reasonable consumption isn't staggering, we'll put it that way. But with marijuana, one of the concerns that I have, and I haven't dug into it, is that it has a habit of just very much making someone very like slothful, very kind of placid, which I could see in some drug cases. Like if someone's got a mind they're just anxious as all get out, right? And you can have these controlled small little doses that would help them kind of calm down. I think that's a great use of it. But I could also see where, as legislatures, when we're sitting there trying to pass laws that are for the betterment of society, right? For society to be flourishing, for everyone to have that pursuit of happiness, right? For everyone to be able to have true freedom, that allowing a drug that makes people more slothful and tired and lazy might not be the best thing to encourage into that society. But that's more my angle on it currently.
Yeah. My quick rebut to that would be that you could make the same case against alcohol or tobacco or sugar, and because you can say sugar is good, yes, but sugar in the quantities that we consume it is not good. And so we could legislate from on high and say, look, you're only allowed this much sugar, and then you're cut off.
Right.
And this is why I like this ordinance against public intoxication, because we're not saying, well, I mean, it is illegal to possess marijuana, but what this law is saying is that, look, if you're smoking it in your home, okay, it is what it is. If you're smoking it in public, well, now you're breaking the law. And so I like where it's going with that, because yes, I would say that for the vast majority of people, the smoking of marijuana is not healthy. The doing of meth is not healthy. The drinking of alcohol is typically not healthy. Same with tobacco. All of these things are not healthy. Also sugar and overeating and not exercising and sitting at your desk for too long and not being with your family and not going to church. Like
the list goes on and on.
Right. The list of things that we do that are bad for you goes on and on and on. But again, going back to what are our laws supposed to do? And that's where I do like, I think, and I'll be ruminating on it for a while now, but I think I like this law where we're saying, look, you're just not allowed to be intoxicated in public.
Right. And I mean, springboarding off that and meeting kind of in the aisle, we'll put it that way. I think, and here again, if anyone's listened for any length of time, I probably mentioned it. I don't remember when, but I do enjoy listening to Michael Knowles, and something that he mentioned that I've kind of picked on that was very interesting is that, yes, the age-old issue, well, you can't legislate morality. I think I would argue that we're currently learning in the American political system that experiment of the 20th century of not legislating morality in some areas, right, has not gone great. But what does that mean to legislate it? Well, that would be that, okay, cool, if you, in this case, drugs, right? If you want to do that in your home, you want to have that certain level of, physical deterioration, the dangers that come with it, right? The addiction, yada, yada. If you want to do that in your home, Cool. State's not going to come busting down your door about that. But when you're coming to this public square and when it could start affecting the rest of society beyond your home or your small little neighborhood, right? That's when public law and legislative morality is like, well, yeah, kind of like voyeurism, right? If you want to be in your home walking around and husband and wife and not wearing any clothing around the house and you've got the drapes drawn, cool. But no, you can't do that going down the road because society as a whole has legislated that that's not good for human flourishing. It appeals to the base desires of the mind and tempts others. So speaking of the people that legislate and make said laws that we were debating about, Mike Simpson fighting against Idaho GOP on House Speaker vote. This comes by KTVB7 by Andrea Bartline. In a recent vote for the Speaker of the House, Idaho Federal Representative Mike Simpson chose to support Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana instead of the favored candidate and Republican Party candidate Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio. For some background for those not following this super closely, Jordan, a founding member of the Freedom Caucus, has failed twice as the writing of the script to secure the necessary 217 votes to become the Speaker of the House, highlighting the division growing in the Republican Party in Washington, the implications of not having a formally elected Speaker in the House of Representatives is that they cannot bring up and vote on issues, which has led to concerns about the looming government shutdown and the desire to appropriate financial support for Ukraine and Israel amid two separate wars. The removal of the former Speaker, Kevin McCarthy of California, on October 3rd by a group of 8 Republicans, worked in collaboration with House Democrats, marked the first instance in U.S. history in which the Speaker of the House was removed from his position by a vote from the House of Representatives. Scalise, who I mentioned earlier, a Republican from Louisiana who was initially running for the Speaker position, withdrew his name for the running, and even he, along with McCarthy, voted for Jordan now. Needless to say, the Idaho GOP, led by party chairwoman Dorothy Moon, expressed disappointment in Simpson's decision not to vote for Jordan. They urged him to reconsider his position and concentrate on addressing significant issues impacting constituents instead of engaging in protest votes and parliamentary delaying tactics. Discussions are currently underway, including some moderate Democrats, to possibly join forces with moderate Republicans and to support Republican Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, who is gaining favor among moderates and is currently serving as the acting Speaker. Which I will say, I don't want to make this too grand than it is, but I will admit I have not been around for a super long amount of time. I know certain people, every point in kind of each generation, they have a certain point in politics that's kind of big or different things. And I'm not going to point to anyone's because the ones I can think of comparing to are nowhere near this. But this is definitely one of the most recent things that I can remember in my life that I have been following very, very closely. I would argue that it's very important to know what's going on because it's one of the 3 branches of government right now that is currently having a leadership change, and depending on who ends up in that leadership role as the House Speaker will have a huge effect of what actually ends up getting to the House floor, which means what actually gets passed or could possibly get passed, which has huge, huge effects.
Yeah. Our Congress has been sitting on their hands for the last 20 years, and their inability and desire to not actually pass laws has led to things like Roe v. Wade taking precedence in the legal system of our country. Now, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, the Democrats had majorities in both the House and the Senate and could have turned around and just passed laws legalizing abortion. They didn't. Why? I don't know.
They had all the power at the time.
I don't know why they didn't.
My guess, if I remember...
I don't know. It seemed like it was a political game.
If I remember correctly, there was a couple moderates. I think there were a couple moderate Democrats. The whole Democratic Party, I know their main thing is abortions, right? That they support it. But even in their party, as much as they are way more unified than the Republican Party, I remember before the election or stuff, there was like 2, 3 moderate Democrats that kept wavering between the Republicans and the Democrats. And so you would have some bills that would squeak by and then other bills that just wouldn't. And I mean, that's an interesting perspective that you're kind of bringing forward there, the idea that they have really struggled to pass any laws or kind of shrinked from that responsibility, which I could totally see that being. There's the other side of me that also wonders if, especially with the House of Representatives, you're just seeing a mirror image of our political culture, that we're getting more and more divided, that each political party has, or just people in general in America have gotten more divided. And you see that forefront, how that plays out on the political stage, where the people that are actually getting elected in the House of Representatives. And so you're seeing this gridlock because I would say culturally in politics in America, it's gridlocked.
Yeah. And I'm glad you went there. I'm glad you went to culture, because I think that's where our biggest problem is right now. Because as the right, we've kind of given up on our educational institutions. We've decided that church is supposed to be completely separate from government. And so what happens inside the church has no impact outside the church. We've kind of sequestered ourselves as right-leaning conservative Americans and said, you know what? I'm just going to be over here, and y'all crazies can do whatever you want over there.
Just leave me alone. Don't touch me. Right? Don't tread on me.
And it's good. Don't tread on me is good to a certain extent. Don't mess with Texas is good to a certain extent. But at some point, we have to reach young people. At some point, we have to reach other people. And so looking at the state of our politics at this point, it seems like the vast majority of the problems isn't necessarily due to the fact that they won't do anything, oddly enough. It's due to the fact that our politics are completely run by our media organizations, by CNN, ABC, NBC, Fox News. You can throw them in there as well. And the majority of the work they try and do is just try to score political points. They're not trying to actually govern. One of the reasons that McCarthy was ousted was that the Freedom Caucus, they wanted to put an end to just
pushing the bill down the road, saying, hey, yeah, there's this government spending, but we need to keep the government open, so let's just push it down the road. And I'm very glad you brought them up, because
well, no, it's not just that though. It's oh gosh, what's the name of the Florida representative? I'm blanking on his name. He was on Tim Pool's show not too long ago. Matt Gaetz is the guy. So Matt Gaetz is the Florida representative. So one of the things he was talking about when he was on with Tim Pool is that one of the things they did in Florida is they only vote on single issue bills.
Oh, the omnibus bill stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So omnibus, that's the thing. And that's like the biggest thing the Freedom Caucus wants to pass is no more omnibus bills. No more of these bills that say, yeah, this is the bill to help grandmas in the nursing homes. Oh, but also here's $5 billion for Ukraine. Yeah. Like, no. Let's vote on grandma and then let's vote on Ukraine. Two separate things. We're not going to vote on the same thing. And McCarthy said he was going to support that, and then he completely backed away from it and didn't. And so when I talk about messaging, one of the messaging things that's happened is the establishment media, they've come after the Freedom Caucus saying that, well, they just want the government to shut down and they want our army people to not get their money.
Which is a lie. If the government did shut down, they're still going to get check.
It's a complete lie. One, they're still going to get checks. And two, they actually passed legislation. They passed a single item bill that said that the military will at least get their paychecks. They covered that base. They said, no, military is going to get paid. That's not going to stop. Everything else might stop. And the one place the media has come after them on is saying that, well, our fighters who are overseas, their wife and small children at home, they're not going to get paid if we shut down.
Which is ad hominem and straw man to the moon. You don't think that the U.S. government and its legislative body said, hey, in the event that, the House or the Senate or some part of this gets gridlocked and whatever else, and funding can't be figured out, oh yeah, we're totally not going to have a provision in there that the defensive force that allows us to come back together in the event that someone tries to sneak attack us, we're totally not going to keep them funded and running. No, yeah, you are. If you're having a fight in your house with your family, that doesn't mean the minute that you've all fought and you've ran away from the kitchen table, you turn off all the security systems around the house. No, they stay on. The doors stay locked.
Yeah. So, I agree fully and completely with the ousting of Mike McCarthy. I agree fully and completely with Jim Jordan getting the nomination. And I agree fully and completely with any Rhino Republicans who are not on board with some of these things that the Freedom Caucus wants. Primary their sorry behinds and get rid of them. I'm done with it.
Yes. Which, coming full circle back to the Idaho half of this, because this is a show about Idaho, coming back to Mike Simpson. He, I think, is suspect.
He's District 2, which is not Boise. It's southeast. There, some parts of, I think it was northeast Ada County.
The north side of Boise, I think, is part of his district.
I don't remember. The Wikipedia article I was reading said it was redrawn at some point. But anyway, he's District 2. So if you are of like mind to Tyler and I, primary him to the moon. Just get rid of him.
Yes, and I went and pulled up his Twitter here to quote his response on this. Quote, Steve Scalise earned my vote for Speaker in the last 2 rounds. He has repeatedly proven his leadership as our conference majority leader, and I'm honored to support him. Intimidation and threatening tactics do not and will not work, period. End quote. Which, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll know my response over there. Wink, wink, you should check it out. But mostly, it's not intimidation. People are telling you, which you as a representative should be so excited about. Hands down, any representative should be just through the roof about this, that their constituents are letting them know how they want them to vote. That is like a godsend within politics, especially when you're talking about local, like state representatives or city council. That is what good, I put that's a very important term, good representatives love. If you have a problem with your constituents reaching out and letting you know in a meaningful way, just calling and lettering and messaging, and you can go on Twitter and see all the responses that are going on below this. Some of them, I will admit, are not the nicest, but that's Twitter. Others of them are very respectful and making a good point. If you're calling those intimidations, then who are the people you really represent? Is it lobbyists now in Washington, D.C., or your actual constituents?
So yeah, primary the crap out of him.
And also, I think this, before closing and moving on to the next story, and I know we're taking a bit longer in these, but I think these are good discussions. I think this is another point that highlights the importance, especially if you're a Republican or right-leaning, to be involved in your local Republican Party, because they are what have the hugest pull on who gets nominated to run for these positions and gets decided on. And if you're sitting there and saying, well, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, but the Republican that's running, right, you've got the Democrat and the Republican in a race, he doesn't represent anything of what I represent. Well, that's probably because you weren't involved or other people weren't involved in your local Republican Party that has a huge, the more I've gotten it, it's crazy effect on who gets those positions or not, and just a couple votes and some couple vocal people, even if you're not an elected person at some of these local Republican meetings, has a huge effect, a massive effect.
Massive. Yep. So yeah, get involved in your local Republican Party or your local Democrat Party or your local whatever party. Get involved in your local party. That's where the things happen that make big changes, is at your local party level. Whichever party you're a part of, get involved locally first.
Yes, 100%. Now, moving out of politics and into something a little bit, a little fast?
No, I'm excited that we're moving away from politics now. This is good.
But yes, moving away from politics, this John is very happy about, and into something a little bit more out in nature. The Snake River Quagga Mussel update. This comes by KTVB7 by Hector Mendoza. As we've been hearing over the last couple of weeks, parts of the Snake River have been shut down for treatment to kill the invasive quagga mussel. The treatment of the river was completed on Friday, October 13th. Officials are now starting post-treatment surveys to assess the effectiveness of the treatment. The Idaho State Department of Agriculture and Idaho Fish and Game are looking to see how effective the treatment was at killing quagga mussel and their larvae, called veligers. They are also continuing to sample the water to monitor copper levels. Observations done last week during the treatment showed that the treatment is going according to plan. However, it has shown that in the short-term impact, plant life, algae, and aquatic life are affected slightly there. Officials also say that doing the treatment was a tough decision, but the alternatives were worse. The cost of pre-treating water to avoid the impact from unknown infested waters would have been severe and would have added to the cost of hydropower generation and irrigation, which we know here in Idaho is a big deal because we don't get a ton of rain, and so we kind of need to store it up there. Now, the big question is, did the treatment work on the mussels? Officials say that it will take a few years to get a straight answer. Great. A portion of the Snake River will be open on Thursday, October 19th for hunting and fishing with certain restrictions, such as decontamination stations. However, the entire Snake River may take a couple years to reopen fully. Which, this has been an interesting story. It wouldn't have been one I would have known about at all without doing this podcast, like zip. But it is one that I know has a huge effect on us here in Idaho, and for those that have just moved here. The hydro and the canal system and the irrigation system in Idaho is the lifeblood that makes this state as amazing as it is, that gives us the cheap power that we do, especially the renewable power fact, and then also allows for places like Boise and the Treasure Valley to be so green and lush and have, I would say, pretty reasonably affordable water and be able to weather through different droughts and stuff compared to other states, California. And so a threat to that system, to that hydro and irrigation system, is a huge threat. So I get why they went this far. I have no doubt some environmentalists aren't the most happy about it, we'll put it that way. But it's also been interesting learning. Plus that one word there, what was it again, John? That was a that was a new one.
They're the larva, the veliger.
Veligers. It sounds like something Minecraft should steal for their next mod, or what is it called? Mob is what they call them in Minecraft or something.
Yeah, the mobs. That's funny. Well, so this one's interesting to me. It seems a lot like how we treat cancer, where we just kind of kill everything and then let the things that are supposed to be there grow back. If we don't have a better way of killing the quagga mussels, which they seem to be an invasive species that would not be good for anything or anyone, then it sounds like we're doing a good thing, or what we're supposed to be doing. My question is kind of, where did the quagga mussels come from, and can we stop them from coming back? And that's some research I haven't done, and probably won't do, but I'm hoping that the Idaho State Department of Agriculture and Idaho Fish and Game are asking that question, and they are looking into that. Because that I would really rather these things not come back if we kill them, and then, 5 years down the road, it's like, oh, hey, the quagga mussels are back. I guess we need to nuke our river again.
You're like,
Yay.
No, please, no. The fishing just got good. Which I'm not going to say I'm an authority on it at all, but kind of being pseudo in that world of fishing and boats and waterways and stuff like this in Idaho. When you go to most of the boat launches here in Idaho, there are signs everywhere that if you have come from out of state, if I remember the quagga mussels, they are more of like over in Oregon, like saltwater, or kind of like that mixture between saltwater and freshwater area that you keep you pre-clean your propeller prop, is where those kind of form on and get attached, and different seaweed and stuff and things. And it's just everywhere that it says do it. I think there's like, don't quote me on this, I think there's like a $5,000 fine if they catch you not having you don't actually clean or dry off or wait for your stuff to dry before you go, and different stuff like that. I know it's a bit serious. Thankfully, most of the time here in Idaho, when you go fishing, it's hot. So once you pull the boat out of the water, the thing dries off in under a couple minutes. And if you've got a good boat you're taking care of, usually the propeller and prop and stuff stays pretty clean. But my best guess is that's what happened, that someone from out of state, they came in, there wasn't a trooper there watching or anything. Person had no idea about the law, put their boat in, had these things on it, and they went, and the rest is history.
Makes sense to me. So props to our government entities for catching this? Or is that just a really bad pun?
It's what is, I think it's not The Office. What's that one gentleman? I'm thinking of him right now, but he sits there. He's like, I've got a joke for you. The government always spends your money efficiently and effectively at all times, and you should give them more.
Is that Parks and Rec?
Yeah. What's that name of the guy? I'm trying to remember.
I don't know. That was a show that I never watched.
I didn't either, but the clips, they move around. They get around. But any case, glad to hear the treatment has gone well. Hopefully they'll get a final conclusion on that. At least we can look on the bright side, which is, I do know when they did the copper treatment or whatever, I saw some footage. There are a couple falls that are along the Snake River there over in eastern Idaho where they did the treatment, and it makes the water like super blue. And so the falls were just this like ocean level like blue that you see somewhere in like the Mediterranean or Hawaii or something. And coming to our last story and our fun one, if the first one wasn't fun enough, especially with politics, because everyone finds that super fun. Carolina Reaper is not the world's hottest pepper anymore. This comes by KTVB7 by Jeffrey Collins with Associated Press. For all of you who love spicy food, there is a new king in town for the hottest pepper on earth. Ed Curry, the creator of the Carolina Reaper, has broken his own world record with a new pepper called Pepper X. It seems like he's been talking to Elon Musk lately. Pepper X is 3 times hotter than the Carolina Reaper and is the hottest pepper in the world now. Curry said he was motivated to create the Pepper X because he wanted to make a scorching pepper that also had a sweet flavor, like he didn't already do that. Pepper X is a crossbreed of the Carolina Reaper and another pepper that Curry is keeping secret. For those familiar with peppers, they have a chemical in them that causes a burn called capsaicin, which is in the same family as arsenic, but it is much milder. Capsaicin triggers the release of endorphins and dopamine into the body, which can give people a natural high. Curry has been working on Pepper X for the past decade. It has taken him 10 years to get the pepper from its first crossbred experiment to the record. He's also had to spend 5 years testing the pepper to prove it was a different plant with different fruit. Curry is protecting Pepper X and release seeds once he is sure his family, workers, and their families can fully earn the rewards of his work. He also sells his peppers to companies worldwide. Curry wants people to eat peppers and thinks they can benefit from the rush that comes after the burn. He does caution people, though, against being overly ambitious and reaching too quickly for the Carolina Reaper or Pepper X. All that to say, Curry did hint that he will be working on an even hotter pepper in the near future, which I by no means I'm going to call myself a super, into hot foods. I've had spicy Thai foods. I have definitely, since my younger years, when I was younger, I wouldn't touch anything hot at all. But now as I have gotten older, I have definitely consumed more hot foods, and I do enjoy and greatly appreciate the spice that some dishes have. But I have not dared to touch a Carolina Reaper, and I have no idea what this Pepper X is. I'm really curious to see when they test it where it lands on the Scoville scale. I don't know why we needed something hotter. Apparently people, just like drugs, you got to have the more strong one.
So I used to be a framer. Well, for a summer. I was a framer down in Albuquerque. And there was an old Mexican guy on our crew. And he had in his tool bag, he had a bag of jalapenos. Now, if you've ever grown your own jalapenos can be kind of hot. But if you've ever grown jalapenos in the Southwest, where it's really hot already and super sunny, those peppers are hot. Like, I've never had peppers.
Face of the sun.
Like, yes, hot. So, this old Mexican guy. So he had this bag and he would just kind of munch on them just all day. I asked him once, I was like, my goodness, man, how can you handle that? Like, why do you eat these? And he's like, well, it helps me know when I'm hungry. I was like, what? That makes no sense. Like, yeah.
That doesn't, yeah, I'm in pain. That'll tell me when I'm hungry.
Well, no, I know I'm hungry when my butt stops burning. Yeah. So anyone who's had really hot things, you understand that. Because you're reminded of the fact that you ate really hot things not too long after you ate them.
I can already hear the homeschool mom being like, you got to remember those probiotics to help your gut so you don't burn your butt off. Don't forget your probiotics and essential oils.
It's either that or they all just went, oh, he told a poop joke.
No. It's a family-friendly show. No foul language was used in the production of this episode.
No, but you say the word poop, and a lot of little boys just laughed. No, hot pepper's cool. If you want to innovate and make an even hotter pepper, awesome. Good on you. One of the things that I do enjoy is the high-like state that you get when you eat super hot things. He even said it in the article. He says that he thinks people can benefit from the rush that comes after the burn. That rush, that release of endorphins and dopamine in the body, it's almost the same thing you get when you drink alcohol. It's very similar response on the body. So if you've ever been curious about what being slightly drunk feels like, eat some really hot stuff. Your jaw's going to start going numb. Your nose and your toes are going to start going numb. Yeah, but it has to be really hot.
Note to self. Don't get drunk. No.
That, I think, is the right takeaway.
Because I've had that experience with some hot things. Specifically, I have a coworker, and he'll bring his Thai food, and they'll grow their own, peppers and stuff. And sometimes his mother, who cooks some of their food and things, will be mean on him and bump even their stuff up a notch. And I'll experience that sometimes, and it's a hate-love relationship, but if that's just a mild taste of what drunkenness kind of is, I'll just be like, nope, I'm good. I'll pass. But, I mean, also, I will say, I had no idea that there was, like, a specific guy who made the Carolina Reaper, and then he's like, also, hey, that thing I made that like is used on all the internet for pranks and funny things and probably on Hot Ones and different things, that wasn't good enough. I need to make it stronger.
3 times hotter. Yeah, it will be interesting. You said it earlier. It'll be interesting to see where this lands on the Scoville rating, because something tells me it's gonna destroy whatever came before it. I still remember back when the habanero was discovered. And we got our rocks off by just eating raw habaneros. But seriously, man, nothing compares to homegrown New Mexican jalapenos, because those things are just, seriously, I've never had anything hotter. I will say though, like Thai or Asian or Indian spicy food, dude, nothing compares to that stuff. I can do Southwestern.
It kicks like crazy.
Oh my gosh, I can do Southwestern, I can do Mexican, I can do Southern, I can do all of those hot foods. Man alive, when it comes to like, I don't know how we're supposed to say them now, but spicy Thai food, spicy Chinese food, spicy Japanese food, Vietnamese food. Oh my gosh, that's just, it's not even the same thing.
It's its own weight class.
It's a completely different thing. It's not spicy. It's
a hate-love relationship. When you have spicy Thai food, it's an addiction that you're eating it and you want to eat more, and it pulls you in. It's like, I need to stop, but you're like, no, I'm dying.
At that point, you're just kind of singing emo songs about how much you love this thing that hates you.
Right. You're just like, how did I get here? I don't know. I'm eating Thai food. I guess it's part of the experience. But yes, not a topic directly tied to Idaho, but I just couldn't pass it up for the funny and interesting episode, especially for all the people out there, I have no doubt, in Idaho that love their spicy food, which I know many. But in any case, that wraps us up for the main stories, and we will roll into the quickies here. Moving into the quickies here, these are stories that I wanted to share with you guys, and if you've listened at any point, you will know I just wasn't able to fit into the main episode because these things, I swear, every week we record them, they get longer. We're trying to wrangle it in, but it just somehow keeps getting away. Anywho, the quickies. The quickies are stories that we weren't going to have any discussion on, but just wanted you guys to get the facts and hopefully to shorten down the episode and make things a little bit more efficient. Starting off with our first one here, Idaho State Park receives $140 million transformation. This comes by the Coeur d'Alene / Post Falls Press by Clark Corbin with the Idaho Capital Sun. Idaho State Parks are set to receive a $140 million transformation thanks to a combination of state and federal funding. The money will be used to address deferred maintenance projects, expand access to parks, and build new projects. The fund is coming from two sources. One, a $45 million from the Federal American Rescue Plan Act, and the other, $95 million from the Idaho legislature. So, hey, the Idaho legislature is giving more than the federal government. I like that. The state funding is coming from the record budget surplus that Idaho accumulated at the end of the fiscal year of 2022. The money will be spent around the state, with all 30 state parks set to receive benefits from it. Some of the specific projects that will be funded include the following: renovating restrooms, building up to 450 new campsites over the next 10 years, adding boat ramps, yes, parking and trail improvements, upgrading electrical and watering systems, buying a hot springs to add to the state parks portfolio. Ooh, I'm looking forward to that. Paving a scenic eastern Idaho trail that is situated where railroad tracks used to run, and opening a new observatory that allows the public to use telescopes to scan the dark skies for free. Also very cool. I look forward to doing a video on that. The funding is coming at a time when Idaho state parks are experiencing record visitations. An average of 7.4 million people have visited state parks each of the past 3 years. The funding will help to address the wear and tear on facilities that has been caused by the increased visitations. It will also help to expand access to the parks and build new projects that will make Idaho state parks even more enjoyable for visitors. Then coming back to Boise and out from the woods, hunger in Idaho on the rise. Food banks need help. This comes by KTVB7 by Abby Davis. Sadly, more people around Idaho have been turning to food banks and pantries over the last few years, and that need doesn't seem to be slowing down. Data from Hunger Free America shows that the number of Idahoans who did not have enough food to eat over a 1-week period doubled from August 2021 to August 2023. These findings line up with how food banks and pantries around the state are feeling the impact. Eagle Community Food Bank, St. Vincent's de Paul Food Pantry, and Idaho Food Bank said they need more food to meet the demand. They're asking people if they can help in any of the following ways. Number 1, donating food, obviously. Food banks and pantries need various items, including canned goods, dried goods, and fresh produce. 2, donating money. Monetary donations help food banks and pantries purchase foods and other essentials. 3, volunteering your time. Food banks and pantries rely on volunteers to help collect, sort, and distribute food. And lastly, spreading the word, letting your friends and family know that there is a need for food donations and volunteers.
Which, staying in Boise, and talking about the river again, forever chemicals in the Boise River and the U.S. This comes from KTVB7 by Sophia Bliss. So this week, there are not 1, not 2, but 3 stories about water management in Boise. This is the first one of them, starting with a new study that looked at tap water across the country and how it may harm people's health. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, 45% of U.S. tap water has at least one type of potentially dangerous chemical in it. A separate study found those chemicals in some of Boise's water. Getting a little into the nuts and bolts, PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, are a family of man-made chemicals that can stay in the environment for thousands of years. Studies show that they could cause health problems in people and animals. PFAS are usually found in non-stick items and things that are stain, water, and fire resistant. They're basically in everything we use, wear, and eat. Dr. Douglas Sims, an environmental science professor at the College of Southern Nevada, said, quote, "Everywhere we look, there's PFAS in rivers, drinking water, surface water, groundwater," end quote. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, said studies highlight links between exposure to PFAS and health problems like reproductive issues, developmental delays in kids, cancer, weaker immune systems, and interference with hormones. All that said about PFAS, there were 2 recent local studies done that looked at levels of PFAS in the water around the Boise area. The USGS conducted one, and researchers from the College of Southern Nevada did the other. The U.S. Geologic Survey took samples from people's taps, with water coming from Veolia, a Boise water utility. They found no PFAS in the one sample they took in Boise. Dr. Sims and his team took 10 samples from a 3-mile stretch of the Boise River downstream from the Boise Wastewater treatment plant. The team found PFAS in these samples. All that said, officials have found PFAS in southern Idaho before. The Idaho Department of Environmental Quality found them at Mountain Home Air Force Base and at Gowan Field. In Mountain Home, PFAS were found in the drinking water. To avoid chemical concentrations in the water, the Department of Defense changed the source of the drinking water to avoid contamination. The DEQ said PFAS were also found in local water systems, including Capital Water Corporation, which serves Boise, Garden City Water and Sewer Systems, Veolia, and a well that serves part of Eagle, Lexington Hills neighborhood. PFAS were also found in a well that serves an early childhood education program in Mountain Home. Now, sadly, there are no federal regulations around levels of PFAS in the water or in the air. But there are some proposals in the works. The EPA is working to set limits on public drinking water systems. Once that's finalized, the government could require mitigations if concentrations get too high. The proposed limit for some of them is 4 ppt, or parts per trillion. Some states are working to limit PFAS through new legislation. The Washington State Department of Health says as of February 2023, PFAS are restricted for some items that touch food, like food wrappers and pizza boxes, and more will be added to the list in 2024, including paper bowls, bags, sleeves, trays, cups, and containers. In May of this year, Oregon also banned takeout food containers with styrofoam and PFAS. Granted, as it stands right now, Idaho doesn't seem to have anything in the works that would do the same.
With that wonderful reading from John there, we'll move into a little bit of a brighter and funner note. Idaho Pickleball Facility coming to Chubbuck. This comes with the East Idaho News by Logan Ramsey. As I covered several weeks back, an indoor pickleball facility called Upper Level Pickleball is coming to Chubbuck. The facility is anticipated to open for business sometime around June of next year. Upper Level Pickleball will have 10 champion-sized pickleball courts, which have a buffer around the regular size court, making them 64 feet long and 40 feet wide. There will be an upper viewing level for spectators with food and drink options. The facility is expected to host monthly or bi-weekly pickleball tournaments. Some tournaments will even have cash prizes. As many of you have seen or have been a part of, pickleball is a fast-growing sport that combines tennis, ping pong, and badminton. For those, like myself, who have never played it, 2 or 4 people play in a court that's about 44 feet long to 20 feet wide with a 34-inch high net. One of the things that sets pickleball apart from other sports is that people of different ages can compete against each other, similar to golf. Also, wrapping back around to that water topic that we talked about, here's the second out of the 3 that we have here. Update on new Micron fabrication developments. This comes by the Boise Deb by Margaret Carmel. For the second story, and to keep with the water theme this week, the city of Boise is moving ahead with its plans for a third water renewal facility in southeast Boise to treat wastewater and recycle it back for manufacturing use in the growing industrial area. The facility is still on track to be completed in 2029. Micron, a semiconductor manufacturer, had initially planned to invest private funds into the third water renewal facility to bring it online earlier and to make it large enough to accommodate all the extra water used by its new fab. However, Micron has since decided to build its own infrastructure to treat and reuse water from the manufacturing facility on its own. The city of Boise will continue to coordinate with Micron on water recycling, but it will be a, quote, parallel journey, end quote. The city's water recycle efforts are part of the city's water renewal utility plan passed in 2020, which planned improvements at the city's aging facilities, expanding capacity to keep up with growth, and add a water recycling component to preserve water. The city is currently testing different water treatment technologies with natural water from Micron at a pilot facility near the Micron campus. The data collected from the pilot facility will be used to design new water renewal facilities. The third water renewal facility will help expand the city's wastewater capacity across the whole city. However, the city is still considering what land to purchase for the third water renewal facility and is currently investigating 3 potential sites.
And moving back to the east side of the state, Shelley Joint School District to ask for $67.8 million bond to build new high school. This comes from the East Idaho News by Andrea Olson. Shelley Joint School District Number 60 will request a $67.8 million bond in the upcoming election to build a new high school. The current high school is past capacity, with 790 students enrolled in a building with a capacity of 650. The new high school would be designed for future growth and accommodate up to 1,000 students. The new high school would be located on property that the district already owns, near the current Shelley High School, by Fur Street and Baseline Road. The existing Shelley High School building will be used as a 7-8 building. The bond will raise taxes by $154 per year per $100,000 taxable market value, not including homeowners' exception. If the bond passes, the new high school will take approximately 3 years to build, and students could start attending it in 2027. For perspective, bond issues in Idaho require a 66.6% supermajority support from voters to pass. If the bond doesn't pass, the district may purchase more modular classrooms, use a mobile teacher, or deny new non-resident enrollment requests. For those interested in weighing in on this issue, there will be an upcoming bond meeting on October 25 at 7:30 p.m. in the Little Theater at the Shelley High School. All are welcome to attend.
And heading away from school and kind of into the mountains, sort of, but then into political or commercial America. REI Laying Off. This comes by KTVB7 by Hong Ta. I think that's right. For those who love hiking, camping, backpacking, or almost anything outdoor, which most of us Idahoans do, you've probably bought or regular REI. Well, they are laying off 275 employees in, quote, lead, end quote, roles in its stores. The company says it is doing this to implement a new staff model that will include a new category of part-time plus employees who are expected to work between 16 to 24 hours a week. REI Union has criticized the layoffs, saying that the company must legally negotiate with the union before making significant layoffs. The union also says that the layoffs betray the co-op's values and will eliminate years of expertise. One of REI's employees also opposed the layoffs, saying that everyone deserves a living wage, consistent hours, and to be seen as a person, not a dollar sign. Then coming to our last one here on the theme for water stuff, second phase of Boise Lander Street Wastewater Project. This comes with a Boise Deb by Margaret Carmel. And finishing our last water story and capping it all off, pun slightly intended, the city of Boise is set to begin the second phase of the $265 million project to rebuild and expand the Lander Street Water Renewal Facility, the city's oldest water renewal facility. The project, which is expected to be completed in 2029, will focus on the largest portion of the 70-year-old plant. During this process, the city will rebuild the deep circular clarifiers, at the plant where wastewater settles so solid waste can be cleaned out of the water during the multi-step treatment process before it is returned to the Boise River. The project is part of the city's more than $1 billion investment in the coming decades to replace aging water renewal facilities, expanding them to keep up with growth, and adding a water recycling program. The project is being financed by a more than $50 million water renewal bond passed by Boise voters in 2021, which opened the door to the city of Boise getting low-interest loans for the project from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. For context, the first phase of the Lander Street improvements was completed last week. It was a $65 million project which began construction just before COVID-19 hit the United States and included the beginning and the very end of the treatment process. This replaced the headworks, which is where raw sewage comes into the plant and most significant solids are screened out, as well as a UV light disinfectant stage. This phase also included building a new entrance to the plant off of Veterans Memorial Parkway. City engineer Jim Parrott said that the idea came after neighbors who lived adjacent to the plant raised concerns about the years of heavy construction equipment coming through their residential neighborhood to the main gate. Also, after the second phase that is coming, the third phase will come after the completion of this project to address the final portion of the plant where biosolids are treated and stored. Lastly, coming to our last quickie and wrapping it up here, Boise Consignment Store expanding west. This comes by the Boise Dev by Ann Daly. Ricochet Home Consignment, a locally owned business, has been open in Garden City for over 14 years. It is expanding and opening a second location in Nampa. The new Nampa location opened last Friday at 811 2nd Street South. The store's days and hours are Monday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. People can both buy and consign furniture, home decor, kitchenware, and more at the new Nampa store. Store manager Riley Agezable, I apologize if I got your last name wrong, says the company has always hoped to expand and that the Nampa/Caldwell area was the perfect direction for them to go. Agezable said that the company already had a base of consumers and consigners from out in that area from their Garden City store, so they knew it would be a great fit. And are thrilled to be able to bring Ricochet closer to them. She also said that consumers can look forward to a wonderful collection of generally used furniture at affordable prices and consigners having the opportunity to sell through a safe location. That brings us here to the end of the episode. Thank you for listening to the entire podcast. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If I missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to me via email at localyokelidaho2022@gmail.com or on Twitter by tweeting me at localyokelidaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.